dedicated to empowering you with information
to make positive choices
and be advocates for your overall well-being.
Welcome to The Health View. Welcome to The Health View. I'm Yvonne Dunetz, and today my guest is Rabbi Jonathan Spira-Savette. Our topic today is the meaning and purpose of life. Rabbi, thank you for being here. I'm so delighted that you're with us. And this conversation about the meaning and purpose of life is a conversation that has occurred through generations. I always think about this beautiful impression that I had since I've been a little girl about what happens when we're first born. To me, as a little child, I thought that when a baby was born, I could see a beautiful candle that was lit. And when that candle was lit, there was a star in the sky that twinkled back. And that was that beautiful baby's star letting them know that they are never alone. And as that baby grew and got bigger through a sense of community, as they go through school and high school, I always imagined that that beautiful candle of light began to get stronger like a torch. And that by the time that child was about 18 or 19, they had that torch. And that torch would guide them into their purpose in their life and give them strength and courage to move forward. And then I used to envision, as that torch guided people, that near the end of a person's life, that beautiful flame might begin to twinkle. And when that flame went out, the star above gave out a broad, bright light, welcoming that beautiful soul back into the universe, where they embraced again all that was around them. And it was something, nobody told me this story, but it was something that I envision every time a child is born. But that in between of what is the meaning of life and its purpose is something that I'm sure you must be asked many times in your role. So what is, from your perspective, the meaning of life and what's one's purpose?
Thank you for having me and for asking and the chance to talk about this. You say that people must ask me all the time, and even though I'm a rabbi and a clergy person, as you say it, people don't usually ask directly, and may ask indirectly through a question about some particular moment. And I think it's true that we don't have this conversation in this broad sweep as much as we ought to, either in a group or even individuals with people they trust, especially. I have, I guess, my few thoughts about how you talk about the purpose of life generally. I would start with the two words that you used. You talked about meaning and purpose. Yeah. And I think it's more frequent to talk about the meaning of life, but I actually like the word purpose better, because meaning I find to be a word that's a little, especially in our cultural time, kind of self-centered. What's my meaning, my personal meaning? But purpose is something which is directed out toward the world and toward the universe. I have a kind of motto or mantra about what I think motors people, and it's maybe the counterpart to the story you started with. I think that people really do crave purpose in life, and that three parts of that are to have deep connections with people. And it's not about just being social or gregarious or having a lot of friends, but a deep connection, whatever makes it deep, with even one other person. A rootedness in history and heritage. I obviously am someone who's living within a religious tradition, and so that's what I know. But I think people need to feel that they're not just boundless and aimless, but come from somewhere and can tap into that. And I think of it as sort of picking up a kind of picking up on a relay where the last generation or who you're overlapping is giving you something and you're going ahead. And finally, a knowledge that our lives make a difference in the world. And that difference stays here after we're gone. And it stays in the world, in this world. And people want to live in a way that has a difference like that.
So explain that further when you say our lives make a difference in the world and it continues even after. In what way do you mean that?
Well, I think that I usually think about it in a, in kind of a concrete way of this world. I mean, people make a difference, know that they've made a difference because they've done something that someone can remember, they've taught something or done a kindness or a goodness. Obviously some people make a difference because they're famous, they're known by so many people for something dramatic they've done. Obviously a positive difference is better than a negative difference. But just to know that there's something which endures, and it might endure with our name on it. People who know us, I remember reading somewhere someone say that we die several times, and the first time is when our body stops living, but the last time is when the last person stops remembering our name. And I think as long as, there are things that endure beyond our name, and especially, I come from a belief that, though we're each individuals and each individual is precious and unique, we don't all of us do everything by inventing something new. We just mix the parts up in our own ways. And the difference we make is by taking something which is eternal and making sure that it keeps going. I didn't invent kindness, but I try to be kind and to know that made an impact somewhere, and that taught the next person to do that. And even if my name isn't attached to that and nobody knows that I was their teacher's teacher, that's a difference. And I could know that I was making or striving to make that difference.
Everyone wants to be loved, honored, cherished, respected, and cared for who they are. And people want to be able to speak their truth. And when people think about that whole aspect of making a difference, sometimes they think that it has to be huge, but it really doesn't. Life is all about relationships and love and caring and kindness. And having that whole aspect, we know that love is the greatest healer. And if people within their relationships, when you talked about relationships, you don't need many, but what you do need is ones that are truly true. And really people who listen to you for who you are, respect you and honor you for who you are, and love you for who you are. We know that with love, that it is the greatest healer and it can help people live their lives to the fullest. What have you seen related to love and hope and the difference it makes?
I think that love is obviously everything, and love is hard. Or love is many layers, and each of us has a capacity to love. And I think again, sort of superficially in the culture, we think of some people as easier to love or more obvious with the way in which they love other people. But that's maybe on the surface of the impressions of people are maybe easier going to be around. But there's a deep love that comes from inside everybody, and it has that capacity. I've known people who are difficult to be around, or other people found difficult to be around, who you spend enough time with them and you see what's in them. You find that place of connection. In my tradition, we call that the third eye, which is the eye that sees not the way a human sees, but the way that God would see anything that God has created in the universe. And I think that knowing that I think even more important, and sometimes than loving, is knowing that we are lovable, that we're worthy of being loved just by being here. Maybe a person with religious faith says, I know that God loves me even when I'm not experiencing enough love from other people. But I think that there's an important spiritual orientation to say that love is coming to me, and it may be just the love that enables me to get up and have food and breathe, wherever that's coming from. But that there is all kinds of love being directed. It certainly is what gives life, and I don't think that people go on without a sense that they're lovable. And I think that the crises that people face in life are of wondering. Some of it is when when a love disappears or love that you depended on isn't there. And some of it is, I think, the deeper question of am I ever loved? Am I ever going to be loved? I also think that love is work. It's not just the good feeling, falling in love. Love is a practice. You have to meet other people. You have to meet people you know and love them more deeply than you have been. You have to meet new people and be open to developing that kind of love and admiration for them, that wanting to discover, and this is, I think, the hardest thing, or one of the, I say the hardest. How many times will I say that this is the hardest thing today? But which is to love even beyond that, and this is, I think, the great teaching of, for me, it came from Dr. King of when you love your enemies and you love those who you can't find a reason for. You talked about hope also, and this is something that I've been thinking about a lot. In my work, I obviously see a lot of people who are suffering with illnesses, who are dying, who are going through real family struggles, and hope can't just be hope isn't a promise. This last year on the High Holy Days, I quoted from Václav Havel, the playwright and president in Czechoslovakia, who said, "Hope isn't optimism," but hope really goes back to the sense that one's life has a purpose and a meaning, and sometimes that's manifest in optimism and a drive that you can get somewhere and try for something meaningful and achieve it. And other times, hope is in knowing that even if you don't, and even if you die, that there will be something that's left behind, and hope can be. Hope isn't about the outcome, but it's about the outcome in a broader perspective.
People say it's part of your journey, the journey of life. For you, in what you do, from your perspective, related to the meaning of your life and your purpose, what is it? What is it that you have come here to do?
Wow, I think I can say that part of my purpose is to help people see these other purposes and to know where to look for their purpose. First of all, to affirm that there is a purpose, because there's plenty of reason to doubt whether there is purpose in life. There's so much suffering. There's so much violence. The world can seem like a bad place, and to question whether there's reason for hope, and to think that we're not just animals with evolved minds. There's really good reason to ask those kinds of questions, and part of my role certainly as a rabbi is to look into that world and to say, in the midst of that, this is how you find purpose, no matter how dark you see things get, whether it's in your own life or in the world. There's a business writer, I guess, scholar, Jim Collins, who wrote these books, and Good to Great, which were about kind of organizational greatness. And what he passed along, and I don't think he invented it, but it's where I found it and it stuck with me, is that you could say that there are three circles in your life and the world, or that intersection. One is what you're passionate about, and one is what you're good at, and one is what the world needs. And your purpose, really, as I see it, is where those three things overlap. That's where you're going to make the biggest difference. And you may be good at things that aren't really of great importance, and you may be passionate about things, and believe me, I am, that I'm not really any good at. And there may be things that I care a lot about, but they're not exactly what the world is needing or even looking for. And so purpose, I think, is dynamic. Certainly for me, at different phases of my life, I've thought about certainly professionally, different purposes, and I'm fortunate to work in as you are, in professions where our work and our sense of purpose are so deeply aligned. But it's not that I have, I think, a single purpose so much as a way of thinking about how to find purpose.
So you started by saying about darkness. In the midst of darkness, when there are all these things going around in the world, that you're able to help people see beyond that. What would you say? There's so much going on now in the world and in our country. There are things that we're witnessing. And so what would you say to people, helping them to understand and be able to see beyond the darkness?
And I think, first we have to acknowledge that it's not always possible. I mean, it's not always possible to see beyond, and it's not or it's possible, but it's not possible today. And one of the things that I certainly have to do as a pastor and a listener is to honor people's sense of darkness too when that's there. And when people, whether it's an individual person in a difficult illness or going through real family troubles, or when it's the community looking out at the world and saying things look really tough, if someone is then open to saying, but I want some reason for hope, I want some sense, then then it's a matter of where you want to cast your gaze and see light. Like I think about the fact that a body that is healing, whether it's an injury or an illness, there's the wound itself, and at the same time there's this tremendous forces of healing that are always going on, the healthy parts that want to rush in and just be there. And that darkness is kind of unstable. If light is anywhere nearby, it's going to want to creep in. And so, in society right now, when we talk about the amount of hate and bigotry that's going on, I also say that there has never been a time in history when there are more people who are sensitized to that and willing to stand up in a heartbeat for groups who even 10 years ago were attacked physically and certainly still are. But the number of people who are allies and in solidarity has never been like it has been now. And that's certainly a tremendous light, and not only a light to see, but something you can then stand up and join and to look at. And I mean, not just to look at, but to become part of, and you bring your own light to that.
You take a stand, you get involved, and that's where you make a difference.
Yeah.
So when you look at young people, and they're just grasping, looking at the world and growing up and seeing and learning from all those around them, how do you explain to them about the meaning of life or the difference that their lives make?
I used to teach high school, and the thing that I thought from my preparation, and then I discovered from doing it, is that you don't have to, by and large, you don't have to teach teenagers or even children to feel that there's life. You don't have to teach them wonder. You don't have to teach them curiosity, and especially you don't have to teach them spiritual curiosity or ethical curiosity.
Why is that?
Well, I don't know why, but I think it's just there.
Yeah.
We're programmed for that, and what happens in adulthood is we begin to get occupied with all the practical things we need to do, and we get diverted. But it's a very exciting time in life when the mind is discovering and the heart is discovering what's out there in the world, not only what's possible, but all the dilemmas. I mean, kids, whether they're in elementary school or whether they're in high school, they just love to talk about, to work through conflicts and dilemmas and how you balance one value against another. And they love to say what they think is, could be possible, what they hope for in how people are and what society is like. And the other thing that I've discovered is that, and this has made me sort of a believer in these kind of Jungian perspectives, is that without even a whole lot of explicit teaching, at least the students that I encounter who are like in 3rd and 4th grade have all kinds of ideas about God and the universe, and which are orthodox or unorthodox, and the mind is just generating these all the time, and all we really have to do is ask. The main way that I think we cultivate a sense of purpose in young people is just by asking them what they think it is. Take for granted that there's purpose, and then let them illuminate what they're thinking about it. I have a sense that people typically grow with that agenda, and they don't need to be schooled to know it. It can be schooled out of you, and it can be schooled out of you by life as well. But
It's very true.
yeah.
People get kind of snuffed out, but you do have that. When you spoke about love before, about that feeling of love and cultivating love, one thing for me is when a baby is first born and you're with that baby, oh my gosh, love just comes and wells. It's an unconditional, beautiful love, and the want to protect and care for and nurture and nourish and do whatever you can. And that perspective of how the wonder of life and watching a child as they develop and all those things that naturally do happen, the curiosity, that grasping of life, of every aspect of life, and that the wonder of being able to ask the questions, and to be able to ask of them their thoughts and their perspectives. When you say that there's such an ease in that communication, and then there at times can be the snuffing up of that stopping of the voice, the truth that comes out, can literally stop hope in people and snuff out that light within them. What can we do to help encourage people to not do that to others, but to allow each of us to grow and thrive and blossom?
It's such a good question, and I think about when are the times in life when I've been most idealistic, and when I look especially at my students, my younger students, whether they're in high school or after they come back when they're in college, and how to know from this side when you dream dreams and you have hopes, and you see how reality helps to shape them, and you go through disappointments and you have to recalibrate. And sometimes you come to dead ends too, and you have to make another turn. And how to take all that wisdom and to have it and not convey it in a way that's going to snuff out the enthusiasm of youthful hope. And I think one of the things that's important to do as a teacher in a broad sense is to I think I force myself to talk out my own life and reflections in that teaching kind of way, with a bias toward hope. I might be stewing about something, and I might be wondering whether some direction that is purposeful is going to pan out. But there are moments to suppress that. I think we have to tell stories that the stories of our own lives and the stories that our heritages and our traditions that are the hope stories, and because without them we won't recognize when the world kind of aligns with that. I thought about this once, thinking about the miracles that are in the Torah, and we're coming up as we film this on the holiday of Passover, where we talk about this miracle of the liberation of the Jews from Egypt. And I realized that what a miracle is that moment when the world that we hope for, the world that we know is supposed to be, and the world that we live in, when they suddenly overlap, they intersect. That certainly isn't always what's happening, but it's happening more often maybe than we realize, and when it happens, it's so profound. And I think telling those stories without denying that there are other stories when we fall short is really important, and we have to beam that out. And we need credibility also. I think that I have to own up to disappointments. I have to own up to when people have let me down, or when hopes have been unfulfilled, or when I wasn't good enough to get something done. And you need to tell the stories of how to, that's the other thing, I guess, which is how to go back to hope, how to get from, it's a cycle, and the line isn't straight.
It's not straight, but that's part of I think the growth and the learning and the wisdom that we gain through living our lives to the fullest in whatever way we can. And that leads us to, as we age, the wisdom of the years. From your perspective, what does the aging process give us an opportunity for?
I am from the point of view of looking to people who are my elders and trying to figure out what they're teaching me. Obviously, I haven't aged quite as much, and I can only hope to. And I've really been blessed in my life. I grew up, within a couple miles of my grandmother, and was part of. Not only was she part of our family, but her friends, the people around her, became part of my life also. And I was always around people when I was growing up who were older, who would talk and take an interest, and I'd hear about their life and the history of the place where I was living, and I'd hear about my mom from the standpoint of people who knew her when she was younger, and it has felt very. I remember when I went off to college, it felt very strange to suddenly be without older people around, and really to go for a decade or more in a very small age cohort, and then to come back now where I am in a community which is multi-generational. I think that there is so much wisdom, and some of it I think really is about this, that people who are the older you are, the more you've had to process the ups and downs of life, and if you can continue to be hopeful and purposeful when you get there, then you do have so much to teach that helps other people, I think, who are younger to have the resources inside to use your story to help when things are tough. I think that older people also remind us that there are different kinds of, I guess, what Erickson called generativity in life, and that some of it comes from those years when you're, professional and full-time and vigorous, or when you're out in the community in a big way doing certain things, and then there's another pace, and it doesn't stop. It just changes. My parents are now in their late 70s and 80, and one of the things that I thought when I was younger was that you kind of you grew up, you sort of settled in, you were at sort of a plateau where you did your thing, you got married, you raised your family, you did your professional work, and then you kind of stopped growing, you did your thing, and then you became old, and I wasn't sure what happened at that point. And I see in my own parents that they continue to search for things to do, to make a difference in other people's lives, and some of the ways they've done that are through their community and the volunteer work they do. Some of the ways are by the friendships they've cultivated with new people who they're continually taking an interest in people, and seeing them not just as people to teach and mentor, but as people also to be as equals with, and to be amazed by, and they also have always had someone who they're caring for even after their parents have died. And so I think one of the lessons is that there's always two directions, looking toward those who are younger, and even no one is too old to look at someone who also has their other needs who they can help and take care of.
It's very true. And it's all about the stories, isn't it? Stories can be very, very profound. And in your work, even as you explain the stories of your parents, that helps to set the tone from your perspective of how you've looked upon things, and also witnessed aging in itself within your own family life.
Yeah.
Which is positive, a very positive role model to keep going. It doesn't end just because you hit a certain age, that there still is purpose, and you still can make a difference, and you can still be involved. And in another way, and the wisdom of the years allows you that opportunity to be able to share in a way that perhaps you weren't able to share before.
Yeah.
From your perspective, what are the greatest challenges that people have in living their lives?
Well, I think the greatest the greatest challenges are, as we've been talking about, I think are being demoralized and being disconnected from a sense of purpose. I think about been talking about this lately, that it used to be that if you went up to someone and just casually said, "How are you?" they would say, "Fine." And now if you go up to someone and say, "How are you?" They say, "Busy." And I've been trying to decode what that word really means, because so we're probably not objectively busier, and we certainly know that we don't work harder than those prototypical farmers of 100 and 150 years ago who were up longer and had physically probably more arduous labor than we do. But I've really come to think that busy means misaligned, doing a lot of things, but not the things that give you a sense of purpose and of moving forward in your life, and that each time we hear ourselves say busy, if we say it too often in a day or a week, that's a signal to us to ask what's out of whack, and which of the things in our calendar do we think we can give up. I mean, some people obviously are busy out of necessity, and most importantly, financial necessity. You have and we live in a society which is not valuing enough people enough to make sure that people have the, are free enough to pursue the purposes that are their real sense of purpose, and that's another set of things. But I do think that what strikes me profoundly is that's what makes things difficult. And I've seen and this is not original, but I mean you see the strength that people can bear, or some people do bear many physically painful and emotionally painful things, if they feel in a wider perspective that they have hope and purpose.
Sometimes that whole aspect of busy, I sometimes think maybe an excuse to sometimes people keep themselves so busy so that perhaps they don't have the time to go within or to really connect or get into some of the thoughts and true feelings that they have and begin to address where they are, or even be reconnected with their own inner peace and calm, or just connecting with themselves and finding out, am I okay? Mm-hmm. Is everything going well here, or am I missing some points? And then what happens is the busyness takes over, and perhaps the recognition that life is so short and we can't get back the time that we're so busy at. If we don't take the time to take care of ourselves, connect with nature, go out and do things that we love, or remember what it is that we love. Do you find that a lot?
Yeah, I'm not judgmental, I have to say, of people who people who are busy for whatever reason.
Absolutely.
And I think and it's hard. I think
there's a reminder there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, and I think that the and each person, each person's discovery is so unique. I mean, I feel fortunate in living, as I say, within a religious tradition that I find the practices that were invented and handed off to me help me, so I don't have to spend time thinking of what practices I need to create for myself, and that's at the very least efficient, for me. And I think that but it's true, we don't know so well how to teach younger people to discover those kinds of, I would call them spiritual practices that help you on some regular basis ask those questions. And we're very good, we're Americans, we're very good at practical things. So I think we tend to treat busyness as a question of efficiency, how to organize ourselves better, and maybe for me it's, if I'm a little late, driving a little too fast on the road, as if that's the answer, to just find a couple extra minutes. And it's there's so many parts about trying to figure out. Usually we're busy with things that come from the good side. Like I say, is my prototypical thing. For those of us who are parents and have kids who we want to provide enough enriching activities to, like that's absolutely coming from the good side. It's coming from love. Yep. And so and once you have something that our love is attached to, it's really hard to give that out and to give that up and to say that I have to edit that out. So I think that's probably, I do believe that the good forces are penetrating through everything, and that's probably what makes it hard. We usually don't talk ourselves into doing bad things. We just we attach a lot of goodness to things that may be just a little bit off, and if we're off by one degree here, we just gradually might peel off and find ourselves in a direction we didn't mean to be.
Yes. So we talk about mindfulness and a purposeful, driven life. How does that make a difference to you when I say that? To be mindful and to have a purposeful, driven life. Yeah. What does that mean?
No, I think that it comes in two fashions. I think absolutely. There are explicit things that I think each of us should do from time to time to ask ourselves about our individual purpose.
Like what?
And I think as I say, this question of what do I care about? What am I good at? What does the world need? And then where's that where are those three overlapping circles for me, in this period. That's something individually, and people do it in all kinds of different forms and practices and cycles. The other thing, though, is I think that there are some things that are just standardly good, and we have habits of generosity, whether it's charitable giving or volunteering or certain kinds of things that people don't have to think of on their own, but to do. And we live in a community where there are so many good places where if you feel you can help someone who needs, you can go and give whatever your talent is, or and though that might not be the answer you would think of when you do your Venn diagram of exactly what do I have to do, sometimes the world knows better than we do, and we're not, even though we're individuals, we're all humans, we're all part of a bigger picture. And if the people in the community have sort of figured out that this is a need, well, then maybe we should get off our high horse and do what someone else thought is good, and follow that also.
When you speak of community, that's critical for a support mechanism for everyone that lives in any capacity to have that support. For you, how would you describe the most healthy community for people to be able to thrive in?
Wow, that's a great question, and I wish I had kind of a 5-point answer about that, because community is a word that we use a lot, and it means a lot of different things. Because for some people, community is a circle and a cluster and a network of friendships, of real friendships where people know you and understand you. And for other people, it's not that. We're all wired differently for being more introverted, extroverted, and for some people, I think having a community is to know that you are part of a group that has a broad sense of purpose, and that you draw strength and pride from being a part of that. You give something to that. It gives some teaching and some guidance to you. I think ultimately community means that a person shouldn't be left alone, shouldn't be abandoned, and that if you didn't show up somewhere where you usually are, that someone should notice and ask what's going on, and give you the opportunity to take advantage of support, or to say, no, I'm okay, or no, I don't want to talk. But it's not really, the difference, I guess, between a community and a society is a community would be a place where you can't disappear. At least you can't unless you did so on purpose. And I think that's where many of our communities certainly fall short. I think it's what every religious congregation asks itself: are we the kind of people who make sure that someone, whether we know them well or not, is noticed and noticeable? Their presence makes a difference to us. And then community becomes a platform for many people where you really develop so much shared language. It's the people it's the place where you're comfortable learning and being challenged. I think I kind of like that definition. It's a place you come to feel a kind of deep joy through those connections, and it's a place where it's a little safer to deal with the challenging idea or the challenging challenge for who you ought to be.
Now, people live distance from family, and they come into new communities or whatever, and sometimes communities are already established. Even as you get older, when you were younger, you see cliques and different things. It can happen even in the older years. So how would you recommend that people cultivate community and embrace others and engage others? Because when you said about being there so nobody is lost, or nobody is unnoticed, or nobody is, what would you recommend?
I think, that's what I talk with people about all the time. Not to lecture them about it, but to try to figure out whether there's a formula for this.
Yes.
I think there's a certain amount that falls in a leadership of a community, a community of purpose, let's call it. Whether that's as I say in my case, a spiritual community, which is to make this point, that it's not just one person's job to look out for out on everybody and out for everybody, but it's everybody's job. How did you ask this? What it would take to build that kind of community? Yeah,
and
it's
not in just silos of community,
yeah,
but in the community as a whole.
yeah,
I guess the human experience needs to experience community perhaps in smaller,
yeah,
but then learn the way of it growing beyond, because we are all one.
yeah.
So how does one best do that?
Yeah, and that's a real question I've been thinking and reading about too. Do we have we know other communities, or we know beyond our own obvious or already communities.
Yes.
We know that one by one. We know that by knowing individuals, or by reading stories, or sometimes it's through the media or through art that we know that. I think that communities, strong communities have such a shared value that they do pass that along, but it's not guaranteed, and I think people have to take responsibility for that, and we're constantly falling short. I think there's no way to keep that going without committed people putting energy and, as you said at the start, love into that, and it will always be hard. We only have to say only so much time and attention. We're always going to be individually falling short of that. We have to figure out ways to encourage each other, and some people will do that more. I think in a healthy community, there are some that are magical and everybody does it, and there are some that are magical in a different way, because there are key people who do that, and they are incredibly admirable.
So that sense of strong community, what is included in that?
It's I'm thinking about people who, like me, crave being a part of a community, explicitly seeing that community, doing things, acting through that community. And I'm thinking of people who draw strength from a community in a less maybe intensive face-to-face way. And I want to, and I used to think that community, that the sort of ultimate was that first thing, the sort
Yes.
of, where a community was like a cause, and you were there all the time, and your face literally had to be in the presence of other faces. And so I think a strong community has to. There are some communities that are built like that, and those are pretty high energy things. And then there are other strong communities that that I would say are like whenever you do appear in the group, you're greeted and noticed, or people want to know who you are, or if you say something in a discussion, or when you're learning together, that people are intrigued and listen, or even just that if you come and sit quietly, that there's somehow a vibe of appreciation, even if you might not want to talk to anybody, and people are in a mellow spirit. So I don't think there's one description of it, and I don't know what the one description of it would be.
And it's interesting because, as you're saying that, there are many different communities that we live in the sense of there's a school community, there perhaps may be a religious or spiritual community, there may be an organizational community, a volunteer community, a friendship community.
Yeah.
There could be many different communities, and the integration of that and the expansion of that versus the soloing it. When you talk about people being busy, they're actually perhaps going from one thing to the other, to the other, to the other. How does one take that tapestry and pull it together and weave it together so that there is an amazing strength behind it versus a depletion from being scattered or going in different directions?
Yeah, I don't think there's a formula for that. I think people, and sometimes people do that by there's one kind of unifying theme or purpose, and they say, well, I need to do some of that over here and some of that over here, and with this group of people who I'm connected to in this way, and this group I'm connected another way, and there's kind of a obvious coherence. Other people thrive on the on the general. What I heard someone call once a kind of a portfolio approach. That I should do something that's very focused on what I do with individuals, and something which is about the big group, and something that creates beauty in the world that's artistic, and something that's more solving a problem. And so I think if you can tell yourself why you're doing it and feel calm when you say it, then that's probably a good measure.
So there it goes, back to the purpose of one's life,
Yeah.
that purposeful driven life.
Yeah.
Something that comes natural, or that you just know, a knowingness of. And the thing is, the amazing thing, we talked about this before, that it doesn't have to be big. A simple kindness to a stranger, or doing something good for someone, or being available to really listen, or to help someone know that they're not alone, or what other things could people do to make a difference for one another?
There are so many, and I think one of my colleagues just recently gave me something the other day to remind me that I think the lesson was that you can never do a project. All you can do is the next step in a project. And sometimes look at an envelope because you're raising money for a good cause. You're not going to get the money today, but the envelope, looking, and the hour you spend maybe stuffing a bunch of them is really important, because it's what it's connected to. And from moment to moment, we can only do the thing that's with us at that moment, and ask why was I put in this moment? And you can to some degree control what moments you're going to be put into. You and I chose to be here at this particular time, but then within that, something happens, and suddenly you're in a position to make someone laugh, or to console someone, or just to be with them and notice them and acknowledge them. And literally any second you could ask, what could I do in this moment that brings that into a purposefulness.
Without a doubt. Talk about being present in the moment, being totally present.
I think that, I know personally, and this is people who know me, this, that I struggle with this sense of, is the moment enough? I think that I always fantasize about the generation before me, the 60s generation, who were, they were trying to stop a war and destruction. They were trying to right the wrongs of racial injustice, and they had a big cause, and in fact, for many of them, the small things that you could do could be a distraction, because they could, sometimes the small kind act could just reinforce the system in which that small kind act is needed. We talk about the poverty and hunger that are institutionalized, and the good things we do by feeding people from day to day maybe take our energy from the kind of advocacy that would change things, so we wouldn't need to do the day-to-day feeding. And so I think we have to think about that too. And again, personally, I think a mix between the up close and the strategic. I believe that our analytical minds and our planning capacities and the things group do when they're less in their warm and fuzzy mode, but in their hard driving analytical mode, those are all part of the mix.
Intention is a part of the mix also, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I always say that if the intention is for the highest healing good of all, I don't think we can ever go wrong. I really don't. Yeah. It's about that intention, and not losing sight for it, related to what is the end result. Is it for the highest healing good? It's almost as if the best thing that we can all do is be able, at the end of the day, to look at them in the mirror and be able to like what we see.
Yeah.
And be at one with what we see.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, what would be the most important things that you would want people to remember about the meaning and purpose of their lives?
I think I'll give that a
The
shot.
difference that they can make,
Yeah.
even in small ways.
Well, I think it's to start by just asking that question and to not doubt that there is a difference that you can make and that you're meant to make at any phase of your life and no matter what you're going through, and to know that the blessing of good fortune is to be repaid and to be expressed in gratitude by trying to make a difference, and that the process of trying to find that sense of purpose is one that you don't have to do alone. That we're provided all kinds of stories and traditions which help to guide us, and that we can slide our way into. We can think about the legacies that people have given us, particularly that we know already, and talk to other people about it. It doesn't have to be an individual process too. We might have teachers and guides and mentors and friends, or just groups of people that to talk about it, and to remember to put this in the center of the conversation. And I guess the other thing is to be a little demanding of life and the people in our lives and those who we look to say things about purpose, to make sure that they do, and to ask to be reminded, and not let people get away with just putting stuff that's too shallow out when they could be heard for saying something more meaningful.
When we speak of legacy, what is a good legacy to you?
Well, again, I think everyone's legacy is unique to them.
What you
for
are
me,
saying is that
yeah.
everyone does have the ability to have a legacy,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
important to know.
yeah.
But what is it for you?
Well, I think the legacy is to teach and inspire people that their actions can make the world a better place, a more just place, a more equal place, and to be able to recognize in more people than they would think that they have those capacities as well, that there's no one who's beyond that, no one who's beyond our concern, and no one who's beyond our, I don't know about no one, but at least more people than we think who are, who we could admire and who we could find inspiring, and that sometimes that's our gift, is to take pride in somebody else who doesn't have someone to cheer for the amazing thing that they did.
And for young people, what would you want them to know about the difference that they can make in their lives and in the future of all the people around them?
Well, I think I want them to know a couple things. One is when they think about their futures and what they should do, that the question of not only what do I like to do, but what good can I do should be part of that. Should be part of that conversation they have with themselves and with the people who guide them. And the other is to just keep enjoying the questions and the searching, and find yourself in as many discussions and arguments as possible of what's good for the world and good for life, and to know that that's not something which stops when the college dorm bull sessions are over. You can continue to do that forever, and you won't go wrong.
You can never go wrong. And to keep that mind active. Because in that process of questioning and seeking, we learn more about ourselves and the world around us. We get a greater appreciation for what it all is all about. It is a short experience. There's no question about it. And what would you want people to remember about this short experience called life?
I think that, boy, you started with this beautiful image, and that we are at once so small in the universe, but that we are so bright, and there is some vantage point from which we are each noticed.
There's no question about that. And it's a big world that we live in, but it's so important for everybody to remember that everyone is special, like what you began with, that each person is special. And can you summarize what you said about how we look at that purpose of what to ask ourselves?
Well, I think that what I said is to look at our, to affirm that we have a purpose, to look at our connections with people that we we draw strength from, and the ways in which we can be a strength to other people in a deep way. To look at the relay that we are a part of, and to know that we were meant to take the baton on something, and ultimately to know that there is a difference of some kind that we make in this world that we're actually living in, that will go on in this place or on this earth after we die.
And you had said about remembering us. What was the expression that you used related to a lifetime, when for people to be remembered?
Yeah, that we can be remembered. We can be remembered by name, and at the same time we might be remembered as long as something we did, even if it doesn't have our name on it, continues to endure. We made that strong, still, and enduring in the world.
It's a beautiful thing. Life in itself, as difficult as it is, it's an amazing experience that can be truly embraced. I think that building community and being part of community and making a difference in this very short time that we have with one another, I really believe that the human experience is for us to love and care for each other, and to learn the ways to be able to do that in an unconditional way, and to really honor and respect and cherish and care for each other. Because when we do that, there's no way that we can't flourish, right?
Right.
And be the best that we can be. It has been such a pleasure to have you here today, and I really want to thank you for all the work that you do in our community and how it impacts other communities. It's people like you that hold that light and spread that light, that encourages people to really live their lives to the fullest, and to ask questions, and to seek and to understand, but also to embrace one another and to realize that we can be one. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, and thank you for what you're doing too.
This is a wonderful experience, and we appreciate your time and your energy, and we would say to everyone to always remember that candle, that torch throughout your life, and remember that you are never alone, and that you are supported, and that you are loved and cherished. Until next time.